On Monday, the House versus NCAA settlement final approval hearing ended without a ruling.
KBTX senior Texas A&M sports writer Travis Brown is here to dive deeper into why the athletic departments were left waiting. We want to start off, Judge Claudia Wilkin announced early in the hearing she wouldn't be ruling from the bench on Monday. So what concerns did she raise with that settlement?
Yeah, there were four points of concern that she had, but really two of them are the highlights. The first one was the issues revolving around roster limits, and the second one was involving athletes who are 10 years old now who don't really have a say in how this is going to go down by the time that they're in college. First, with the roster limits, the settlement does away with scholarship limits that they have on different sports. For instance, 11.7 used to be the limits in baseball, but it puts roster limits on. So the schools can pay out as many scholarships as they want, but only to so many roster limits. Well, there was athletes who came and testified during this hearing that said, because of these roster limits, I'm not going to have a spot on my team anymore, and this settlement negatively affects me. The way that they talked about maybe solving this was grandfathering in the current athletes and working their way down to a roster limit as eligibility expires with some of these athletes. That's still going to be something that the NCAA hasn't necessarily been keen on, but they might have to go back to the drawing table and put that in. The other one was, she said, the kid that's out there playing kickball who's 10 years old now, he has no representation in this settlement that's going to last for 10 years and can't agree to it before it is approved. And so not just necessarily sure how that's going to get settled. It might just be something that she raised, but ultimately will still approve the settlement. There's other issues too, a little bit on the salary cap and things like that. But really, those were the two things that were probably going to be the most hung up, and we'll need to have some answers in the brief that both lawyers are going to submit next Monday.
Objections were heard from athletes and their representation. How did the judge respond to those concerns?
Yeah, she really leaned heavily in on the roster limits and on the same things we just talked about in the last little bit. But the two other things that were raised were Title IX concerns and concerns with, starting with the Title IX concerns. She said that could be something that is raised in a different suit after the approval is heard, but it doesn't have to do with the antitrust ramifications of the lawsuit that is ahead of them in that settlement. So the Title IX thing is kind of thrown out. And then something else that was constantly brought up was collectively bargaining, and how collectively bargaining would be the right way to move forward with some of these issues so the athletes have a say. But athletes right now aren't employees of the university, so collectively bargaining is out of the picture. She actually kind of liked that idea, but said it's not up to this court to decide. That is another employment issue.
When we talk about this case, this settlement, will this settlement pass approval?
Everyone I've talked to has said, yeah, there's some hiccups here, and there are probably going to need to be a few more concessions by the NCAA and the plaintiffs. But ultimately, it will probably pass within the next couple of weeks. I talked to Sam Ehrlich, who is a professor at Boise State, and we have a little sound of that, of what he said would be kind of the next steps and why he believes it would be approved.
I definitely do think it gets approved. I think there will be some minor changes. I do think, I would imagine, I'd at least venture to guess that whether the NCAA likes it or not, we'll have at least some form of phasing out the roster limits, some sort of compromise in that area to try to, kind of ease Judge Wilkin's concerns in that area. But I do think the settlement will be approved largely as is. I think any of the changes that will be made will be largely incremental, largely just really small, kind of really kind of in the weeds changes.
What other information was pulled from the hearing?
Yeah, just that there was almost 400,000 athletes identified as members of the class, but a very few, a small percentage of those actually filed objections. 343 opt-outs, 73 objectors, and almost 90,000 claims made. So that was just a little bit of the data behind the back pay athletes that are a part of the settlement.
Okay. Travis Brown, thanks, sir.
You got it.
Appreciate the update. We're back after this.